In time, I call the member for Newtown.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to speak on the Conveyancing Amendment Sunset Clause Bill 2015 and express the Greens' support for this bill and the protection that it offers to people who are buying off the plan. As fair trading outlines, there is an emerging concern that is certain developers may be lawfully terminating contracts specifically for financial gain through sunset clause provisions, and there may be instances where we see developers deliberately delaying a project to activate the sunset clause. This is a serious problem and yet another example of how we see the greed within the development industry, within the developers and that industry attempting to profit out of what is our neighbourhoods and our communities. It's a particular concern to people living in the inner city areas. In my electorate of Newtown, we have a number of very massive developments going on. We are surrounded by urban growth projects, the Parramatta Road Urban Renewal Project to the one side of the electorate and the Central to Everleigh Urban Growth Project to the other. We have WestConnex heading in on the southern end of King Street, so we know all too well the risks of development. In what is an 11 square kilometre smallest electorate in the state, we are surrounded by developers and developer greed, and we know as a community the risks that large developments and allowing developers to put their profits before the interests of the community can have on our community. We also know that there are huge rises to the cost of housing within the inner city areas, and there are big risks to the fact that what we will lose forever, and once we lose this it will be gone forever, is the diversity of our inner city communities. Unless we do things to address and combat the putting profit before everything else when it comes to dealing with housing and developments in the inner city, we will soon see that Sydney will become a place where only the uber wealthy can afford to live, where only people who are on salaries of MPs or greater can afford to live. And what we see instead is that those people that are actually the artists within our communities, those people that are actually the creative types in our communities, the students that want to be able to live close to their campus at Sydney University or UTS, those people being pushed out of our inner city areas. And that's something that we will do whatever we can to prevent. This specific bill goes to address one certain element of that, and I think that it is very timely that it is the case, because I know that we have been contacted in my office by a number of individuals that have raised serious concerns about this very matter. One example of this was just a couple of weeks ago. I was contacted by a 28-year-old medical doctor, a prospective constituent of the electorate of Newtown. And I say prospective because they have been due to move into their unit in Newtown, which is close to their workplace, by the end of this year. But unfortunately, Jin is one of the many Sydney-siders who bought into a new development off the plan, investing her hard-earned savings into the deposit, knowing that there would be a wait for a few years before she was able to move in. What Jin didn't expect is that the wait would then be dragged out to the point where her unit could be taken away from her. Zin is now facing the prospect of the vendor rescinding her contract by means of using the sunset clause. She paid a deposit for her unit in May 2013, and then at the start of this year, the original sunset date of 30th of June 2015 was extended to 31 December 2015. In August, she then received a letter notifying her that she could rescind the contract. She replied, declining to rescind the contract, and requested a further extension of the sunset date if need be. She has not received any reply from the developer since. Under the existing legislation, the vendor can move to rescind the contract against Zin's wishes. Zin has visited the construction site in Newtown from time to time, and since she was told that there was an extension of the sunset date earlier this year, and she has said that work appears to have stopped around March when the second floor of the building was under construction, and she has genuine concerns and suspects that the vendor has been intending to use the sunset clause to rescind the contract all along. Now, we know in the heart of Newtown that the property prices and the value from 2 years ago to now would mean that any any developer that is in the interests of the bottom line only and not in the interests of the community would no doubt take this opportunity to pull the opportunity for someone to move into their home, to live in the wonderful suburb of Newtown, close to where they work as a medical professional, as a sole way to be able to gain more money, and the value of that development and those properties and those units would have increased significantly in that 2 years. So I would very much express my support for the swift action that the Minister for Innovation and Better Regulation has taken in relation to this bill, and I would ask the Minister to clarify whether or not there is any support or assistance that can be provided to those that are facing this problem that had happened prior to the inaction of this legislation and the provisions taking effect, to see if there is any support or guidance or assistance that can be provided for those that have suffered this problem prior to the legislation coming into effect.